Today is Sunday, October 29th, 2017, and this is Celtics Beat on CLNS Media, and I am Evan Valenti filling in for Larry H. Russell this week. Episode 234 is brought to you by Bombfell and Harry's. Go to harrys.com/Celtics for a free trial razor set. We're going to get to Sean Grande, the play-by-play voice for the Boston Celtics on 98.5 The Sports Hub and on the Boston Celtics Radio Network. He's going to join us in just a second, but I want to tell you guys your last chance to win 2 tickets to the Celtics game coming up this Wednesday, November 1st against the Sacramento Kings, against De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Scalabicier, the young gun Sacramento Kings coming up November 1st. You can win a pair of tickets. All you have to do is subscribe, rate, and review Celtics Beat on iTunes. You can even make fun of me if you want. I don't really care how it works. Just go there, subscribe, rate, and review Celtics Beat on iTunes. That's all you got to do. The winner will be announced this week, coming up this week on CLNS Celtics on Twitter. Again, it's at CLNS Celtics on Twitter. Again, do all those things to get yourself a chance to win 2 tickets to the game November 1st against Sacramento. Now, here comes Sean Grande. So, before we even get to the meat and potatoes of this thing, Sean, I gotta ask you, as a guy that's been a fan of the NBA for a long time, what was it like calling a game at the Mecca the other night?
I thought I was pretty excited about it, and I thought it was going to be really cool until Max and I found out where we would be sitting, and that kind of put a damper on things. As most people know, we've had some issues.
Even in your own arena, you have issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got the worst broadcast spot in the league, but being a throwback game, more to the point, being a non-NBA arena and being a game where NBC Boston, I got to get in the habit of saying that instead of Comcast, wasn't doing the game, we assumed we'd either be courtside or have a location where, we could, what's the word I'm looking for, see the game, as it was going on. Instead, we were up at the top of the building. We had a great look at the floor. What was going on it was kind of difficult. But no, it was a really cool thing. I love that kind of stuff. I love, tweeting about it. I love tweeting the box score from the last time the Celtics played there. And, I don't think we do that. I don't think we do that enough. Make the connection to the history. And I learned, because you learn things. I didn't really know the history. I knew that when I was a kid, the Bucks had a crazy floor, but I didn't know the whole story of it. I didn't know ESPN had done a 30 for 30 short on it.
Yeah, I watched that. That was good.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't know any of that until, we were getting close to the game. And even for I thought this was a little under the radar until the last day or two when people kind of realized this thing's actually happening. And so I love that kind of stuff. I'm waiting for my favorite movie when I was 6 years old was The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. I'm waiting for that Pittsburgh floor, when they have the Dr. J crazy jerseys and all that stuff. So I don't think we can do this enough.
I always like when Indiana brings the Hoosiers jerseys out, like the Hickory High jerseys. I'm a huge sucker for that. I know it might be gimmicky to some people, but I do enjoy a little bit of paying homage to history. And I was scrolling through the Bucks Reddit page, which of course can be an interesting time, but I thought this was a great quote from somebody in the Reddit forums. Quote from somebody there. Well, it was a Mecca game, all right. We lost to the Celtics. Reminds me I don't miss the rest of the 80s that much. I thought that was a brilliant take on that. It was a fun night. It was a great basketball game. Don't get me wrong. It's both very good teams. Teams that are definitely going to be in the playoffs. It was an exciting night, I think, for the city of Milwaukee. And I got to be frankly honest with you. That floor didn't bother me at all. I thought it was, and I think the story behind it. I think it was Ryan Indiana that was the guy behind the mastermind behind the design of the court. I thought it was cool. It was different, and because things are cool and different, or at least different, it doesn't mean they're weird. It was fine. It was a way to pay some history and respect to history in Milwaukee, which is actually a nice little rich basketball city. But I do want to get into some other things about this season, and I'm going to give you some time. I'm calling it the Sean Grande victory lap. And there are several victory laps that I would like to bring up. And I mean that in this way. We had you on a podcast that I do for CLNS called Celtics Roundtable during the summer. And I was appreciative of the time. We talked about a couple of things that you were absolutely 100% right on. First one, quote from you. Danny is the dangerous man picking at 21. You give him control of the board, and anything is possible. Now, you said that on July 15th, right after the Boston Globe did a photo shoot with Markelle Fultz. It seemed like everything was Markelle Fultz related. I was convinced they were going to take Markelle Fultz to the point where I promised that if Terry Rozier was on the roster, I'll eat a Terry Rozier sandwich, which I did last night. They took Tatum. They traded down. They took Jayson Tatum. He has been way better than I expected. Your early impressions of the Celtics 19-year-old?
That he's not 19. That there's no way this kid is 19. I thought, when he was 19, the first half on opening night against LeBron, he was 19. And then he came out at halftime, and he's been about 24, 25 ever since. And it's just those things you can't teach. And also, he has the body. I think it's way too early to call rookies 4 games into their season a rich man or a poor man's. But look at Kuzma of the Lakers. I think this is the prototype. It doesn't surprise me. There are going to be certain players that do better in the Ben Simmons, certain players that do better in the NBA than they did in college. And I think Jayson Tatum and Kuzma and certainly Ben Simmons have a chance to be those guys. I just think when Danny says in July, well, we would have taken Tatum number 1, and everybody rolls their eyes at it because they're just, you stare at that board, and a lot of you do. I try not to, but I know a lot of us do it. You stare at that NBA draft.net, whatever. You stare at your own mock draft, and you just lock those guys into place as if it's some sort of science to who the 8th guy is and who the 11th guy is. We'll be talking a lot about that tomorrow night as we're going to review that 2013 draft because of Antetokounmpo and Kelly Olynyk and Rudy Gobert was in there, and obviously Anthony Bennett went number 1, and how hard it is and how random it is that we get so carried away about taking a snapshot on one night, basically 1/10 of the way into the horse race to determine who the best player is. That's what these guys have to do. They start the race, and then these guys, all right, who's going to be the best player? And you have to decide 5 seconds out of the horse race that lasts, 2 minutes long. So it's, not an exact science. And I really thought, because I get a lot of grief. I'll hear it from the anti-Danny people, and there are some. And we'll hear about, the late Fab Melo, and we'll hear about Gabe Pruitt, and we'll hear about, and I get it. He's been doing this for 15 years, so there's going to be picks he would like to have back. But my thing about Danny is comparing him to the other GMs in the slots. When I was talking about controlling the board, he's been picking low for the most part all these years. And my point is, you want to rip Danny for bad picks, then you can, but it's like ripping Miguel Cabrera for the 60% of the time he doesn't get on base.
Yeah, he's still the best hitter on the planet when he's locked in, It's like the worst guy you want to see in the box at any point when any player in Major League Baseball is locked in. Miguel Cabrera is in a very, very short list of guys you don't want to see. The thing about Tatum that really gets me is defensively and I've read some things all over the internet about how quickly he absorbs information, Jayson Tatum. But defensively, you think a guy his size in terms of like how frail he is, because he's again only 19, will get pushed around on the floor. But he's done things that have surprised me defensively. He's blocking shots, he's stealing the ball, he's been unbelievable, he's switching well, he's guarding in one-on-one situations. But the one thing that really does impress me, and it's something that I thought would get changed from summer league to now, is like how he scores. In the summer league, because it's such a much different environment. You have no time to really, hang out with your teammates and figure out where everybody wants to get the ball, and you don't have a lot of time to, run sets, run plays. It's a free-for-all out there, essentially, right? Tatum scores a lot in summer league from isolation, a lot of the, mid-post isolation stuff that nobody likes to see or do or at all. Meanwhile, he's, come into the NBA, played a very specific role for Brad Stevens and shine. He hasn't really done any isolation play at all whatsoever. He's finding his spots in the whole harmony of the entire offense. That is what's been the most impressive thing to me, because I was worried about how he would find himself on the floor with the rest of the team, and he's been seamless.
It helps that, certainly he's playing with Kyrie and Al Horford, and for 5 minutes, Gordon Hayward. These things are going to help him. Obviously, playing with much better players as opposed to the summer league when he was the guy. And there were some moments last night, late third quarter, early fourth quarter, when he and Jaylen Brown were the guys on the floor. Kyrie wasn't in the game, Al wasn't in the game, and you see sort of a different, you see his brain turning a little bit. But listen, this is the new NBA. A lot of us grew up with the mantra that defense wins championships and good defense beats good offense. That's not how it works in the NBA these days. This is an offensive league, and good offense is going to beat good defense. And you just have to find a way to hang in there defensively and find guys that can score, on their own when everything else breaks down. And Jayson Tatum has some offensive gifts at a ridiculous young age.
Quick break. Episode 234 with Sean Grande is brought to you by Harry's. Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price. Over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's, and it's one of the 3 million. I confess, look, I've never had a more comforting and close shave. And I'm a guy that likes to grow a beard, but every once in a while you got to trim it down, make sure it's okay. I use Harry's. They are the best. So they're blades with the highest quality I've ever seen, and most importantly, you're saving big bucks. Jeff and Andy, the two ordinary guys who were fed up with buying overpriced razors, they started Harry's to fix shaving. They bought their own German factory with over 100 years of blade making experience to ensure the highest quality, and all products are backed by a 100% quality guarantee. Harry's offers their blades at a half the price of leading 5-blade razors selling directly to you over the internet. You have to give Harry's a try if you have not already. If you haven't, it's completely risk-free. Claim your free trial offer from Harry's today, a $13 value just for free when you sign up, just to cover the shipping costs. Your free trial set includes a weighted ergonomic razor handle, 5 precision-engineered blades with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. Get your free trial set to go. Harrys.com/Celtics right now. That's Harrys.com/Celtics. Back to Sean. Yeah, if you think about the NBA is predicated on being tall right now. I mean, it's obviously a big man's game with the exception of Isaiah Thomas, our very beloved Isaiah Thomas. But the game is about being as tall as possible, being as skilled as possible, and being able to space the floor as much as humanly possible. And that's why Al Horford has been, kind of the real key to what makes the Celtics go. Thursday night was a spectacular Al Horford game. And I feel like after Thursday night, here comes everybody to the woodwork. Oh, Al Horford was so great, and this and that and this and that, and Boston really nailed that one. And it felt like not too long ago, only a year ago, some people were talking about how much of a bum Al Horford is and why that contract was a waste of time and this and that. It's nice to finally see people kind of open their eyes a little bit to the prize that is Al Horford. In your estimation, Sean, is this Al Horford being the same guy, just everybody realizing how good he is, or did he actually make a little mini leap here? Because you look at some of the guys who have gone from year one to year two in Brad's system. Evan Turner is one, a guy that was, frustrating year one, year two, you couldn't live without him. Another guy on that list for me, Isaiah Thomas, a guy that was a little frustrating, a little chuck heavy, but then last year he was magnificent, spectacular. Which one of those is that for you?
I think it's actually the former. I think this was Al all along. Perception and reality is always a funny dichotomy, and here are a couple of examples of that. Brad Stevens gets here, and the Celtics, with nobody on the roster and a total mess of a team, start out 12-14 or whatever it was, and they lead the Atlantic Division in December. So Brad is a super genius. He may be a super genius. I wouldn't say that to his face, but he may be one. But the point is that everybody perception-wise is, oh, my God, this is the greatest young coach ever. And then nobody paid attention when the Celtics lost about 38 games in a row. After that, it all went away. Doc Rivers, his first year, comes here and gets a team that wasn't thought to be very good into the playoffs, and then because of the brawl at the Palace, the Pacers, who should have been the top seed in the East, end up as the 5 seed, and you got to play them in the first round. So the Celtics lose in the first round to a team that was much better than them, and everyone was kind of on Doc from the beginning that, Al, flash forward to last year. Al Horford plays a couple of games. He has a concussion issue, which was very scary for him and really makes an athlete think about his mortality. He was literally and figuratively in a very dark place when that happened. Remember, he missed 3 weeks. Celtics lost a lot of games in that early stretch. And the perception, I'm going to say perception, that talk radio idea of Al Horford, I think, was sort of warped from the beginning. And everybody sort of started from that place as opposed to looking at the guy he was when he was healthy in the second half of the year and the playoffs. But the irony is, they always said about Billy Joel, it was his dream to play backup in somebody else's band. I'm not in a bad way. He can still be the best at what he does, but he just didn't want to be the guy. He wanted to show up for work, put the uniform on, play the game, go, whatever. That's what Al wants. Al doesn't want to be. He doesn't need to be on TNT. He doesn't need to be the star. He sort of was in Atlanta, and now it's the perfect situation for him because because now he can just play at an extremely high level, and all the mics are going to go to Kyrie anyway.
Except for last night at the end of the game, I think Kristen Ledlow ended up finding Al Horford at the end of the game. And he's such a huge piece for what they do. He's a great voice in the locker room, and it was just nice last night because I've been beating the drum for a while. I've called people out. I thought Al Horford was the best player on the Celtics in the playoffs. He shot 60% from the field, 50% from three-point range. This year, he's trying to be, and somebody else pointed this out to me, he's trying to be the first center in a very long time to average 5 assists in back-to-back seasons. And I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been Wilt, the last person to do that. And you just look at how solid he is. And I thought Thursday night is a great example of the calming presence of Al Horford. I felt like at the end of the game, it got tight a little bit, and, Giannis and the Bucks are making that run. And I sat there watching the game, and I'm thinking, if Al Horford doesn't touch the ball every single offensive possession the rest of the way, the Celtics aren't doing the right thing because of the way he's able to survey the floor at 6'11". He can see everybody, and if there's people moving around, if guys are making cuts, he is going to find you with precision. And you saw that on that pass to Kyrie Irving with a nice left-handed floater to, again, not essentially put the game away. I think Marcus Smart did it later on in the game with the dump off to Aaron Baines. But I think having Al as such a calming presence both on the floor and in the locker room, it goes beyond the ledgers in whatever book you want to look at for money-wise. He is absolutely 100% worth the money. And as you said, wasn't a lot of winning happening before Al got there. It's nice to see a competent center back on the floor for the Celtics again.
He and Brad are player-coach soulmates. They in every possible way. They just fit together perfectly on and off the court, and they make that group. The money, again, you brought that up, and it's interesting because that, I think, is part of the percent. Oh, this is a max contract guy, and he's sitting out with with concussion stuff, and he doesn't score 30 points a game, and he doesn't grab 18 rebounds, and he's not featured on TNT promos. The contracts are determined by the market value. There were 5-6 other teams that would have been more than happy to pay Al Horford the max money. The same reason Gordon Hayward was going to be a max. You can't look at that and say, oh, they're paying him all this money. It's like the Celtics won when they got him at that money. They were the winners to be able to do that. And the same thing with Gordon Hayward and whatever. I mean, I guess we can finally put this free agent nonsense to rest when the Celtics never had max money ever. Free agents don't want to come to Boston. And then the first time they have slots, they get 2 of the 3 guys that they target in 2 years, which, again, I mean, I just got tired of.
And they almost got Durant. It's not like they weren't in the conversation.
There were people in the organization that felt there was and even now when you talk, listen, kids change their minds, and he's still a young guy and whatever, but there was a period of time late the night before that there were a lot of people within the organization and within his inner circle that thought Durant was going to go Celtics. I mean, it was very real for a while.
Yeah, and I like how you brought that up. It's now the first time ever that the Celtics had max money. They get 2 of the top 3 guys available in the free agent pool, possible. And then I guess we'll stick with Hayward because, it's been a big storyline and there's a lot of great stuff that comes out of it. And we talked to you back in July. You thought the Hayward stuff was real, and you had a nice bit about what Brad Stevens means to Gordon Hayward, and I thought you put it really well. Is Brad Stevens the most important person in Gordon Hayward's life? No, he's not. But is he the 8th most important person in his life? Is he the 10th? Is he the 12th? What would you do for the person that's like the 8th most important person in your life? Think about it in that regard, and then you can see why the Gordon Hayward stuff is really real. And again, I had something to do with that. Gordon Hayward now is Celtic. It stinks that you got 5 minutes and 15 seconds of it, and it was beautiful. And I can't explain to you how excited for this season I was. I believe that this team actually could have taken down Cleveland and had, barring an injury on the other side of the floor, could have taken the Warriors to an interesting series in the NBA Finals. Obviously now that's a little bit out the window. That's going to be put on hold for a while. But what one of the things about Gordon that I really liked was something that got reported during the Philly trip about how Brad texted Gordon, hey, I'm going to be out of town for a while. Do you need anything? And Gordon Hayward texted him, I need a basketball. And that's the kind of stuff that, basically books get written about and movies get made about and all that other stuff. But I love just the mentality of a guy like that. What did you learn about Gordon Hayward in your very short time with them during the summer and, again, the 5 minutes, 15 seconds of regular season action?
Nothing. I mean, very little. We travel with him a little bit in the preseason. You just don't. It takes a while for a player to become, ingratiated into an organization, and it just happens so suddenly. That's why, I flash back, and you got to be old enough Boston fan to remember, and in some ways it's a bad parallel because this was a career-ending injury and a life-changing moment. But the Travis Roy injury, the kid from Boston University in 1995 who was paralyzed, that happened right in front of me. I was working that game. And it was on his very first shift as a freshman at Boston University. His dream was to play at BU, and he gets there, and on his first shift as a freshman, he suffers this, horrific injury. And it was the way the community and Jack Parker and everybody rallied around him. It was strict because it wasn't somebody who had been there. And that was what was so interesting to see the Celtics as an organization. And picture being Gordon Hayward having to go through this if it had happened in Utah last year, where he had been his entire professional life. Now, with the exception of Brad and Tracy and the family and, Micah Shrewsbury, everything is new. Everything is brand new. You play 5 minutes. You've been with these guys a couple of weeks. You have the shortest preseason we've ever had. So all this stuff is completely brand new, and then he's got to deal with all that too. And I think it's been, as comforting as you could imagine, not just to have Brad and Tracy and Micah and the few people they do know, but to watch Celtic fans who had not been able to make any connection with him yet just rally to him and be so affected by it. And, I'm not into the silver lining and things happen for a reason. Laura Keitlinger, the comedian always had a great line about that. People who say everything happens for a reason. If you listen hard enough, it sounds an awful lot like anything can happen with a razor. So it's, I tend to put that one aside and not really put a lot of faith in it. But it is a year in which it's not a gimme year, but what are the expectations now for the Celtics? And hasn't Brad Stevens, remarkably, magically, been put into a position again where the expectations are low? He has a chance to overachieve. There was virtually no chance to overachieve on public perception at the start of this year. Now there is, because what if you get back to the conference finals with this team anyway and get to Cleveland anyway and maybe win a game or two in this series? And what if you do more than that? That becomes miraculous, and it's a chance Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum will be one full year of this in when Gordon Hayward comes back. And that's going to be, if you were excited for this year, I can't imagine how excited you're going to be for next year.
Oh, we've already started thinking about it. That's how excited I am for next year. I've decided we're a full year away from that. I'm already really excited for that version of the Boston Celtics. And you bring up Jaylen Brown, who, I mean, look, I've been a massive Jaylen Brown fan. I didn't expect this sort of jump coming right away. But I think the confidence this kid plays with for now 21 is excellent. I mean, when he goes 2 for 10 the other night, I don't even blink an eye at it. Now with the Hayward injury, guys like him and Tatum and more from Marcus Smart and a little bit from Aaron Baines, and they'll get a little bit from Marcus Morris when he rejoins the team, and they're going to have to find a way to make up that point differential without Hayward on the floor. But I like the fact that the kid that they've invested a lot in, a high draft pick, 3rd overall in the draft, where Danny was apparently nuts for taking a kid out of Cal who shot poorly from 3-point range and from every advanced metric was a complete negative on the floor, took a chance on him and has completely shined. I love Jaylen's confidence in the floor right now. It just seems like, look, I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to dunk it as hard as I possibly can, or I'm going to drive by you, or I'm going to shoot this wide open 3-pointer from the corner. I'm going to make, like, the confidence, I think, is the difference between Jaylen last year, where he's sort of figuring himself out and how he belongs on the floor, to now where he's confident. He makes the right cuts, the right reads, and even if I even like it this way, he knows that if he screws up, it's okay. He'll learn and get better from that. That's, I think, one of the biggest differences from Jaylen last year to this year.
And my favorite thing last night was him going 0 for 8, could not make a shot, and then when it mattered, he made a big play late in the game. Offensive rebound, get fouled, and that's what you're looking for in a leader-type player, because there's going to be 0 for 8 nights. It's funny, I was talking to Brad before the game, and I said, are you concerned about, that he was very quick after the Tuesday night game, when everyone was, I think Abby had said something like, I'll give you a chance to heap some praise, on Jaylen, and he didn't want to do it because he said, listen, people are going to do that. There's going to be plenty of hype, and they're going to have to deal with that. And I said, are you worried about that? And then we kind of both simultaneously said, the game will take care of that, because this is you have to learn at 19, 20, 21 years old. You can be on TNT and score 32 points and be the player of the game, and Charles and Kenny and EJ are talking about you, and then the next night you fly to another city on a back-to-back and you go 0 for 9, and that's the NBA. So all that stuff is gonna happen. It's how you deal with the roller coaster, and it's on the nights you go 0 for 8, can you make a big play in the final 2 minutes, and that is when you're beyond your years, and that's sort of when you become a leader.
Yeah, it's nice to see the young guys step up. I'll give you one more victory lap. We gave you one for being right about how important Brad Stevens was to Gordon Hayward, but again,
I got to say, if my ex-wife had done this, our marriage might have lasted.
Maybe. Hey, a lot of people see. The thing about Twitter and the internet is, like, when somebody screws up, and like Old Takes Exposed is a great resource. Like, I just think it's a fun gag to like relive some of the bad predictions we've all made. And luckily for me, I'm not cool enough or famous enough to be a target of Old Takes Exposed. So I've had my fair share, right? And everybody loves to dump on people when they're wrong. But I think you could easily do the same thing when people are right. And you were right back in July about, Hayward his thinking about Brad Stevens being a big part of his life. You were right on about Danny. If you give him the number 1 overall pick in the draft, he can do literally anything that he wants. And the best part about Danny is he does not care about public backlash, as we saw with Isaiah Thomas's trade. Again, the cruelest, coldest move I think I've ever seen a GM do. And yet, as we sit here, looks like probably the right move. So again, I'll give you credit for that. And the last thing I'll give you credit for, and I got a little whiff of this during the summer when we interviewed Jared Weiss of now USA Today Media Group. He told us off the air in a podcast. He said, "Guys, I got something coming in August. Don't do anything about it now, but I'm telling you something right now. Everybody I've talked to at Summer League has told me the same thing. Terry Rozier is coming for everybody." He's like, everybody, that's all I've been talking about. It's the work he's put in, the time of the gym, the time of the jump shot, getting his body right, all this stuff. He's like, you're going to see a new and improved Terry Rozier. I only bring this up because, again, off the camera, you talked about how people gave you a lot of flack for defending Danny Ainge for drafting Terry Rozier. You said, look, there's something there. Go back and watch the tape. There's stuff there. I've seen him in practice. I've seen him shoot around. Go back and look at his tape at Louisville on a Rick Pitino. You will find the reasons why Danny drafted him. Again, your last victory lap here, Terry Rozier has turned into quite the indispensable backup point guard for the Boston Celtics.
You could make a case he's been the most consistent player through preseason and the first 5 games. And, victory laps are fun. And remember, everything is predicated on Old Takes Exposed. And as a joke, last night when the game was over, we were talking about how well Kyrie had played and how Horford doing this and, Jaylen Brown making that play late. And so I said, well, naturally all the shows tomorrow will be about how Giannis isn't ready to be that guy. That's tomorrow's take. And, of course, I'm a monstrous Colin Cowherd fan, as everybody knows. I have a total man crush on him and had for years. Friend of mine, all the above. I think he's great. But I knew that was coming today, and you could see it. Like, there it is. Giannis isn't ready to be LeBron. Because that's what works. And, we're talking this week on the day of the coldest take in the history of Twitter from the all-time.
Yes, I 100% agree with you in that. That was ridiculous. For those
it's the greatest one of all time. And I was just mad that Seth Davis saw it before I did, because mine would have been something along the lines of my greatest wish right now is that if it were someone other than me, that Jackie Robinson himself could be here to talk about that. If you don't know what we're talking about, Skip Bayless tweeted this week that Lonzo Ball has it tougher than any rookie in the history of pro sports, and that's like, I'm sure Jackie Robinson might have a thing or two to say about that, not to mention some others. But the Rozier one is one I've had fun with over the years, only because it's the only time in I got 20 years in the league now, and 17 with the Celtics, and the only time Celtic fans ever turned on me. I get some grief sometimes when I actually talk honestly about LeBron being as good as he is, and that you still irritate some people who can't handle that reality. But the only time fans have ever turned on me here in 17 years was when I said, I didn't even say, oh my God, Rozier's going to be, I just said, well, all you want, you're gonna like this pick. And there was Matt Moore runs the Twitter for CBS NBA, who just destroyed the pick. And F, he grades all the picks. F, go away, terrible pick, blah blah blah. And I just quote tweeted that or whatever we did back 2 years ago and said, save this tweet because you're gonna want it, in a couple of years. And, obviously looking back, that's what people's job is, to have opinions, so obviously not all of them are going to be right. But the Rozier one is, I think if you're around long enough, you're going to get lucky. I went on with Michael Holley when he was doing the NBC the Sports Tonight show. It was 2010. The Celtics had just lost to the Nets. You remember that game? They lose a home game to the New Jersey then Nets, the worst team in the league. In 2010, everything's going completely south. The next game we're in Detroit, and pregame, I said, write this down, put the date over my head when I say it. The Celtics will be, I think I said we'll be in Cleveland for the conference finals, and obviously it turned out to be Orlando for the conference finals. I said the Celtics will be in the conference finals, and it was an absurd thing to say, but this is the one thing, if I've learned one thing in all the years in the NBA and pro sports, it's this, and it applies to hot takes and reacting to things. When you are winning, it feels like you will never lose again, and when you are losing, it feels like you will never win again. And everything always evens out. And we have never had more people whose job it is to overreact to what happened the night before.
I will be one of the people.
Everywhere.
I will be one of the people that didn't like the Rozier pick at first because I was so infatuated with Justice Winslow. I mean, I really was.
Remember, but Rozier wasn't instead of Winslow. He was instead of Grande Hollis Jefferson or Bobby Portis or those guys.
Well,
by the way, you could make a case now, and I still like Winslow too. Michael Jordan maybe saved Danny from himself.
He did. No, he you don't even have to make the case. You can just flat out say it. He did. He definitely did. Because I think, and you never know. And I've talked with a bunch of people about this, most recently Cole Zwicker of the Step Back and a bunch of different other NBA and college outlets, about how organizations can have an impact on development. And now what we've seen from the Celtics, I mean, again, very small sample size. What we've seen from Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Terry Rozier, and Marcus Smart, the guys that have been drafted, with Danny and Brad there. The levels they get better at every single year is fantastic. Because now you have to kind of skew it that way. So if Justice Winslow ends up in Brad Stevens' tutelage, maybe it's a little bit different. I don't know. You can't ever make that case. But the reason why I didn't like the Rozier pick at first was because I was so infatuated with the idea of Justice Winslow. And then I went back, I watched the tape, I watched him at Louisville, and I got a little frustrated at times because, again, like late in the shot clock, he would take some stupid shot, and I was like, what are we doing here? And then I'd watch him work out. And then I would watch him get hot. And I was like, how do you stop this guy when he gets hot? And then you start to see the athleticism, the guy that can rebound, in a sea full of in a forest full of trees. Here comes Terry Rozier out of nowhere to snag a rebound with one hand out of nowhere and push up the floor. Like, there are obvious strengths to Terry Rozier, and I missed on a lot of them at first. And I'll be one of the first guys to tell you I was dead wrong about it. But
here's the point on drafting and how fragile it is, and you have to. It's like Miguel Cabrera and the batting average thing. It's just consistency over time, and this has to do with institutional memory. But here's how fragile the whole thing is. In 2004, Jimmy O'Brien walks. John Carroll comes in and coaches the Celtics for navigating a ship that was just an absolute through the wreckage. Mark Blount not listening. Just a disastrous, calamitous end to the year. In the midst of all this, somehow, some way, the Celtics go on a 6-game win streak, including winning games at Minnesota the year that was the Timberwolves' best team ever. The Kevin Garnett, Sprewell, Sam Cassell. The Celtics win a game at Minnesota. This is 2004. They had another quality win. They win 6 in a row. So when you get to the final day of the season, they end up tied with Cleveland for the final playoff spot. Because of a game early in the year when Ricky Davis, who was then a Celtic but wasn't at the time, Ricky Davis had a bad game, Cleveland loses. Celtics win that tiebreaker, and they go to the playoffs instead of the Cavs. Celtics are the 8th seed instead of the Cavs. They get destroyed in the playoffs, whatever. But as a result, they're not in the draft lottery. So they're picking where they pick. There's no chance to move up. There's no whatever. They're picking where they're picking in the draft lottery. In the 2004 draft, the player that Danny loved more than any in that spot was a guy by the name of Robert Swift. And because the Celtics were picking where they were picking, because they made the playoffs, Robert Swift was off the board. And Danny would have taken him, no matter what he tells you right now. Because everybody, and he was right, Robert Swift was an extremely talented guy. But the Celtics would have taken Robert Swift. Instead, he goes to Seattle. The Celtics take Al Jefferson. So because of the fragility of one game in 2004, the Celtics have Al Jefferson instead of Robert Swift, and Al Jefferson becomes Kevin Garnett, which becomes the new Big Three era, which becomes all the championships, and that's how fragile the NBA draft is, that one slot, and one game in one moment can make the entire difference of a franchise. So point being, if Winslow, if you trade all the picks away for Winslow, maybe you can't make some of these other deals. Maybe the Kyrie deal doesn't get, you don't know. But the ways this can go, it's like one of those books that we used to have as kids when we still read books. You get to the end of the page, and it's like, to do this, turn to this page. To do this, turn to this page. And it's a completely different story. And again, that's how fragile it all is.
I do want to finish up with Kyrie because obviously major storyline for the Celtics this offseason and has been a huge part of what they've done in 5 games. What's it like hanging out with him? I never know how to read him. I always think now with the world is flat thing that he's just constantly trolling all of us at the same time and just trying to prod us to see what we'll actually believe and what we won't believe. What's it like being with him on a somewhat regular basis?
Again, very early. I don't like making judgments, very early in the year. One of the most not disappointing things, but one of the things that worked out, I was very much looking forward to really getting to know and traveling with Shaq when he was here 7 years ago. And then, the injury, he was barely with us. That second half of the year, he wasn't there at all. And you just, you lose those opportunities. And obviously it's just been a couple of interactions that Max and I have had with Kyrie very early. He's clearly a different breed of cat. He's obviously highly intelligent and does like to mess with people, and comes up in a different era of that sort of Kobe mystical, the distance you put between yourself, not necessarily trusting, and why would you be? I'm not sure I would be if I were in that spot. So I think it's an interesting time early as he gets to know Boston and Boston gets to know him, and I think it's one of those things where the success or lack of for the team is going to make a big difference in building that relationship, because you can't take a bigger chunk of pressure and put it on your shoulders than Kyrie did. Not just I want to be the man, not just I want to be away from LeBron and do it myself, but to come to Boston and replace a player whose popularity is almost impossible to describe in terms of how quickly he became a fabric and part of the city. The city loved him, and he loved the city, and I've never really seen anything like it over such a short period of time. Brady was Brady and Poppy was Poppy, but it happened so fast for Isaiah, particularly with this myth that guys don't want to play in Boston and whatever, all this nonsense, and it was just a mutual love affair. And to come in and replace that, if things don't go well from a perception standpoint and the team's losing in the first half of the year, which is very possible given the roster turnover and the injuries, there's potential for trouble, I think. So it's sort of rough seas at the start for him, and I think he's got a lot on him on the court and off the court. But as what's that they say? Be careful what you wish for. He asked for it. Let's see if the kid can do it.
Sean Grande, the play-by-play voice of the Boston Celtics on 98.5 The Sports Hub and the Boston Celtics Radio Network. You can follow all of his very good dry humor tweets on Twitter at Sean Grande PVP, which is play-by-play. Sean, appreciate the time today, man. Have some fun in Miami, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Celtics Beat number 234 on CLNS Media, brought to you by Bombfell and by Harry's Razors. Go to harrys.com/Celtics for a free trial of Harry's Razors. I want to give a couple of shout-outs, first and foremost, to my own podcast, Celtics Roundtable. You want to check that out? Go to CLNS Media on YouTube. The vidcast, not even just a podcast, the vidcast. You can find us on our own YouTube page in CLNS Media. Check us out there. Follow me on Twitter at Evan Valenti, EvanValenti. Again, I want to thank Sean Grande for joining me today. Plus, a couple of other thank yous to hand out. Music was provided by Chuck Dietz and Steph Legrateau, for graphic designer Scott Dillon, CLNS CEO Nick Gelso, and for the executive producer of this show, Larry H. Russell. Evan Valenti signing off. Celtics Beat, powered by CLNS Media.